I pulled into my mom's driveway early that morning, the last batch of wedding invites resting on the passenger seat next to me, and a box of pastries in my lap. It was a quiet, crisp day, the kind of morning that should have felt like a fresh start, the kind I'd always imagined before my wedding. But the house, when I got there, was unnervingly silent. Usually I could hear her clattering around in the kitchen or the TV humming in the background. But today, nothing. The air felt thick with stillness as I walked through the front door, expecting the usual warmth of her voice, the smell of coffee brewing. Instead, I found a note on the fridge. Wedding's off. Expect a call from my lawyer. That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just those cold, cruel words staring at me like a slap to the face. I should have felt something, anything, anger, confusion, heartbreak, but I didn't. I felt nothing. Just this overwhelming, numb emptiness. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and typed a quick text. Understood. It was like something inside me had shut off. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't call anyone. I just stood there for a minute, staring at the note. And then, as if it were the most natural thing to do, I walked over to the trash can and tossed the pastries inside. The weight of it hit me, but it wasn't a rush of sadness. It was a cold realization, a sinking feeling that my entire future had just been ripped away. My wedding, my life, had been stolen from me. By the one person who should have been helping me plan it. By my mother. I didn't have the energy to call anyone, not even David. Instead, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, letting the coldness of the note seep into my bones. Then I walked out, got in my car, and sat there in the driveway for what felt like hours, just staring out the windshield. The whole thing felt calculated, like she'd been planning this all along, and I was just a pawn in a game I didn't know I was playing. No, worse. It was like she'd been erasing me from the picture, one small piece at a time, until there was nothing left of me at all. I couldn't let this go. I had to make sure I got control of whatever was left, and I was going to take back everything she had taken from me, even if it meant breaking her apart in the process. I spent the whole next day in silence, just sitting in my apartment with my phone buzzing every few minutes. Texts from David, calls from friends, and voicemails from vendors asking if I was okay. I didn't respond to a single one. What was there to say? My world had just collapsed, and I wasn't ready to talk about it. Not yet. Instead, I dug through every wedding document I had. Contracts, emails, spreadsheets. The entire time, I kept trying to make sense of it all, like there had to be some mistake. But the more I looked, the more I saw how much of the planning had already been taken out of my hands. The vendors had already been paid, but the accounts were all updated under Mom's name. My name? Nowhere. Not even the wedding cake had the right details on it. It was supposed to have my fiancé's favorite flavor, not her choice. I went online and froze the wedding account. Everything. Every transaction related to it. I wasn't about to let anyone get away with this mess, not without a fight. Then I pulled out my phone again, went through the call logs, and started piecing together everything. That's when I remembered something Avery had said a few weeks back when we were picking out dresses. You know, she'd said, holding up the one I'd chosen for myself, this one would suit me way better than it suits you. At the time, I'd laughed it off, thinking she was just being Avery, always trying to get in the spotlight, making everything about her. But now, looking back at it, that comment hit me like a punch. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a random offhand remark. It was a signal. Avery had been quietly slipping into my spot the whole time, and Mom had been right there, helping her do it. I wasn't just another piece of the family's perfect picture anymore. I was the mess they had to hide. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wedding was never mine. It was theirs. About control, about keeping up appearances. Avery was always the better fit for their idea of what perfect looked like. She was the one they'd been pushing forward all along. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. I wasn't going to get emotional about this. No crying, no rage. Not yet. I needed to think. The urge to call Avery, scream at her, demand answers, was strong. But I knew that wasn't the answer. Not yet. Not when there was so much more to uncover. I started going through the financial records again, digging into every tiny discrepancy, taking notes and cataloging everything. Contracts that had been altered, payments that didn't make sense, a photographer's invoice with Avery's name on it, not mine. I saved everything, screenshots, emails, anything that could be used as proof. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized how far back this went. This wasn't a last-minute decision. My mother had been working on this for months, probably longer, and then the gut punch, the thing that sealed it for me. I remembered how Mom used to push me to date Ethan. Back when I was still with David, she said Ethan would be a more suitable match for me, someone who could keep up with our family. At the time, I'd brushed it off as her usual meddling, but now it felt like part of a bigger plan, like she had been laying the groundwork for this moment the entire time. I ran my fingers through my hair, staring at the screen of my laptop. I couldn't believe this was my life now. Everything had been manipulated, every move, every step, but I couldn't let them get away with it. No more passivity, no more waiting for someone else to fix it. I was going to expose everything. I wasn't going to raise my voice, though. This was going to be clean, methodical. I'd be calm. I'd be sharp. They wanted to control my life? Fine. But I was going to take back the reins, piece by piece. It wasn't just a typo, either. The invoice was addressed to her, the contact info was hers, and the dates, all of them matched what had been planned for my wedding. My stomach churned. Like something was being ripped out of me. I kept scrolling, my fingers numb, as if the next thing I found might change everything. And it did. A copy of my own wedding contracts. But they weren't mine anymore. The names were different. The venue details changed. Not for the wedding I'd been planning, but for a whole new one, for Avery. I leaned back in my chair, a sharp breath escaping me as the weight of what I was seeing hit. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. Long before she handed me that note on the fridge, she'd been stealing my wedding, stealing my life. I opened another email thread, trying to make sense of it all. It was from one of the vendors. The subject line was something like wedding details confirmation. I clicked it open, and there it was. Every line of communication between my mother and the vendor. She had been the one making the changes all along, changing my wedding details, my choices. There was no way this had been accidental. She'd been rewriting everything, moving pieces around, shifting everything to fit a vision that wasn't mine. My hands clenched into fists as the rage built up inside me. I could feel it spreading, cold and suffocating, crawling up my spine. The feeling was terrifying, but also liberating. Because the more I saw, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about a wedding. It was about control. Manipulation. She had tried to erase me, and I was done letting her. I opened my folder, pulled together the pieces. Screenshots of the altered contracts, the invoices, the emails, and started organizing them. I had to be careful, had to make sure I had everything backed up in encrypted files, safe and secure. I wasn't about to let any of it disappear, like it never happened. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I realized something else, something that made my stomach twist even harder. I remembered how, at the time, it seemed innocent enough, her insistence that Ethan would be a better match for me. He had the right family, the right background. He was everything my mother valued. I had laughed it off then, thought she was just meddling. But now, it was starting to make sense. She had wanted me with Ethan, the man she thought could fit into their perfect image. She had pushed us together, almost as if she knew this would end. And when I'd broken up with him, when I'd found David instead, it hadn't fit her plans. David, my fiancé, the one who had been so supportive during all this, who'd been on my side. But now I was wondering if he had ever really been in my corner, or if he'd just been another piece of the puzzle she was building. I gritted my teeth. It was all there now, every clue I needed. The image was coming together, my mother's perfect family with Avery at the center. I wasn't the fit anymore. I wasn't the one they wanted. And I couldn't pretend like I didn't see it. I shoved the thoughts away and focused. This wasn't about what I'd lost. It was about what I was going to do next. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I didn't speak to David for 2 days. Not a word. The silence between us felt like an open wound. I wasn't angry, not exactly. More like numb, empty. I didn't want to hear his voice, didn't want to look at him. I needed space, and the more I sat with everything, the more I realized he wasn't just a bystander. He hadn't just been supportive, like he claimed. He had been complicit. I realized he wasn't just a bystander. He hadn't just been supportive like he claimed. Maybe he hadn't planned it, but he let it happen. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the screen. It was a screenshot from a mutual friend. The photo hit me like a freight train. Avery in a wedding dress. The one I had picked out months ago at the boutique I'd spent hours at. The one I had fallen in love with. And there she was, standing in it, smiling like it was always meant to be her dress. The caption was what made it worse. Fitting for the big day. I froze. The words burned in my chest. I couldn't process it. My hands started shaking as I stared at the screen. I should have known. I should have seen it before, but I was too wrapped up in my own world, thinking I was the one being wronged. I had been naive, and now everything was unraveling in front of me. Avery hadn't just been a passive participant. She'd known. She'd been playing along, and maybe she'd even been the one behind some of it. How could I have been so blind? I couldn't sit with this. I couldn't keep spinning in my own head, drowning in these realizations. I needed answers, and I needed to know if I was the only one who hadn't seen it coming. I picked up my phone again and dialed Kate's number. Kate had worked with my family for years. She'd been a friend, a confidant, someone I trusted. When she picked up, her voice was tired, but familiar. "Hey Kate, it's Jordan. I need to ask you something. Can we talk?" There was a pause before she replied, cautious. "Of course. What's going on?" "I need to know what's been happening with my mom," I said, my voice a little rougher than I meant it to be. "I need to know if everything with my wedding was a plan from the start." She sighed, and I could almost hear her running her hand through her hair. "Jordan, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've heard things. Your mom has been talking about taking control of the family business, the assets, for years. She's been positioning Avery for a while now." I felt the world shift under me. "Avery?" I echoed, barely able to get the word out. She was part of this?" "It wasn't just about the wedding, Jordan," Kate said softly. "Your mom's always seen you as the one who might—" She stopped herself, like she wasn't sure how much to say. "She's always seen you as unpredictable. And Avery? She's always been the one she knew could handle the responsibility. Handle everything. Your mother's been planning this for a long time, positioning Avery as the one who would take your place in the family business." I was quiet for a long moment. Every word Kate spoke hit me like a punch. And yet, it all made sense. The control, the manipulation, the way my mom had always subtly pushed Avery forward. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything, about keeping the family's image intact, about making sure the right one was in control. "But she never said anything to me," I whispered, the hurt creeping in. "She's never said anything like this. Not once." "I know," Kate replied, her voice low. "But that's how your mom works. She doesn't ask for permission. She just takes what she wants." I had to steady myself. My hands were trembling, but I couldn't show weakness. Not now. Not with everything hanging by a thread. "Thanks, Kate," I said finally, my voice hard. "I need to go. I've got some things to handle. Take care of yourself, Jordan. I'm sorry. I really am." I hung up, the weight of Kate's words heavy on my chest. My mind raced. My mother had been playing this game for years, quietly maneuvering, slowly cutting me out of the picture. And Avery? She was always meant to be her replacement. The thought of it made my stomach churn. My own sister, wrapped up in this. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not until I had more answers, more control. But I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't waste any more time. I had to go after the money, the manipulation, the control. I reached out to a lawyer, someone who could help me navigate the mess my family had created. We met a day later. "You've got a strong case," the lawyer said after listening to everything. "Your mother's misuse of power of attorney. That's a serious violation. You've got grounds for fraud, for emotional distress. We can take this to court." I nodded, feeling a flicker of something. Maybe hope, maybe just determination. "I don't care about the money or the business," I said quietly. "I just want to make sure she can't hurt anyone else." "Understood," the lawyer said, We'll move forward from here, but be prepared, it's going to get ugly. I didn't care. It had already gotten ugly, and I wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. I sat across from David, my hands clenched in my lap, trying to control the storm brewing inside me. He was quiet, watching me with those eyes that used to calm me. Now, they felt like a betrayal in themselves. You need to know everything, I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. I didn't know what to expect from him, but I had to hear it. I needed to know just how deep the lies went. I need you to be honest with me, about my mother, about you. David shifted, his gaze flickering nervously, but he nodded. I know, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. He looked down at his hands, his fingers picking at a loose thread on the couch. It's not what you think. I waited, my breath catching, feeling the weight of the silence stretch between us. It felt like it had been years since we'd really spoken, since I'd felt like he was truly with me. I didn't know how to handle it, he said quietly, his voice low. Your mom, she sent me medical records about your anxiety. She said I needed to be careful to make sure you didn't get too stressed out. She wanted me to keep you calm, to make sure everything went smoothly with the wedding. She was worried about what would happen if things went wrong. A cold rush of air seemed to knock the wind out of me. My mother had sent him my medical records, my private struggles, my past, laid out for him like a warning sign. My hands started to shake, but I kept my focus. I couldn't let myself lose control now. So you've known. This whole time, you've known. My voice was quiet, almost lost, but it was steady. I had to be steady. David's eyes met mine, pained. It wasn't like that. I didn't know everything. I thought I was doing the right thing. She just wanted to protect us, Jordan. She wanted to protect you. She was just worried. Worried? I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You knew she was trying to manipulate me and you didn't say anything? I didn't want to upset you, he said, his voice tightening. Your mom. She was just trying to control things, and I didn't want to add fuel to the fire. I thought I could just go along with it, keep the peace. It's what she wanted. But I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think You didn't think, I interrupted, the frustration seeping through now. You didn't think this was wrong, David? You didn't think maybe you should have told me what she was doing? That maybe I should have known that my own family was working against me? David swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. I'm sorry. I really am. But you have to understand. I didn't know how bad it would get. I didn't think it would fall apart like this. And the prenuptial agreement? I shot back, my words sharper now. Was that part of the plan too? Was that her idea too? He looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. His gaze dropped to the floor. It was. She suggested it to me a while ago. She said if you got stressed out, if your anxiety came back after the wedding, that it would be best to have something in place, to protect me, to make sure I wasn't left high and dry if anything went wrong. The words hit me like a slap. I couldn't breathe. It was like a punch to my ribs, like everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a lie. You went along with that, I whispered, my voice shaking now. You didn't tell me any of this. You didn't think I should have a say? I didn't think it was that big of a deal, he stammered, his face red. I just thought it was, I don't know. I thought it was just her trying to make sure things didn't fall apart. My heart was racing, my chest tight with disbelief. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw all of it in his face, the betrayal, the manipulation, everything. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was done with this. Done with trying to salvage something that was never meant to be mine in the first place. I stood up, and he followed me with his eyes, his face a mix of guilt and confusion. Jordan, please, talk to me. I shook my head, unable to hold back the anger anymore. I can't do this, I said, my voice low but firm. I wasn't crying. I was done with that. But my hands were shaking, my body cold with a fury I couldn't explain. I turned and walked out of the room without looking back, my mind whirling, the weight of everything crashing down. It wasn't just David. It wasn't just my mother. It was me. I was the one who had let this happen. I had let them control me, let them make decisions without ever asking if I was okay with it. But no more. I needed to focus. I needed to keep moving forward. not backward. Later, I met with my lawyer again, the pressure of the conversation with David still heavy in my chest. But there was no time to sit in that. No time to feel sorry for myself. "We're ready to move forward," the lawyer said, looking through the stack of documents I'd provided. "The evidence is solid. We've got everything we need to file a civil lawsuit against your mother. Fraud, emotional distress. It's not going to be quick, but we've got a strong case." I nodded, swallowing hard. There was no going back now. The fight was on. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take control of my life again. Not ever. "Let's do it," I said, my voice steady despite everything swirling inside me. I was done waiting. It was time to take back what was mine. I stared at my screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It felt like I was standing on the edge of something big, something final. For so long, I had kept everything hidden, swallowed the shame, the anger, the feeling that I had no control over what was happening to me. But now I wasn't going to keep hiding, not anymore. I opened my social media and started typing. Every word was deliberate, calculated. I wasn't just telling my story, I was exposing a lie. I included photos, contracts, and screenshots. The wedding invitation with Avery's name instead of mine. The invoice for the photographer with her name. Emails between my mother and the vendors, showing how everything had been changed behind my back. I even uploaded a few audio clips, ones where my mother's voice was unmistakable, giving instructions for the wedding she was planning for her perfect version of me. The one that didn't even exist. When I hit post, I sat back, watching as it processed. My stomach turned, but I felt a rush too. I had no idea how it would be received. I didn't care. I had to do it. I couldn't let them get away with it. The reactions came almost immediately. The flood of notifications felt surreal. People I hadn't spoken to in years, strangers, even distant relatives started commenting. Some were supportive, offering their sympathy, saying how sorry they were that I had to go through this. Some were disgusted, just as angry as I was, but there were others, people I had known my whole life, who didn't believe me. They called it a family dispute. They told me to keep it private, that I was airing dirty laundry. My fingers twitched as I read their comments. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to silence me, trying to make me feel guilty for sharing the truth. But I wasn't going to back down, not this time. It wasn't about getting sympathy. It wasn't about being pitied. It was about ensuring this kind of thing didn't happen to anyone else. My family had been trying to erase me for years. Now it was my turn to speak up. And if people couldn't handle it, that was their problem. I kept scrolling, watching as the comments piled up. Some were more supportive than I could have ever imagined. Friends, even people I barely knew, shared their own stories of family manipulation, of being silenced for too long. They told me they were proud of me for standing up. Weeks slipped by as the legal battle heated up, and then the post appeared. A post from Avery. It was a photo of her and Ethan in their wedding clothes, smiling like the world was perfect. It was everything I'd been afraid of, an image of the life they had always planned for me, a life I had never agreed to. And the caption was the worst part. "Fitting for the big day. So happy to marry my best friend." There was no mention of me, no acknowledgement of my accusations. Nothing. It was like I didn't exist. It was just another slap in the face. Another reminder that Avery had been in on all of it. I stared at the photo for a long time, my heart heavy in my chest. But as the anger rose, so did something else, resolve. I wasn't going to be drowned out by this. Avery could post all the photos she wanted, pretend all she wanted, but the truth was out. She couldn't hide from it anymore. None of them could. I took a deep breath and refocused. This wasn't just about exposing my family. This was about making sure I never had to live in their shadow again. About taking back my life. The post had done its job. People were talking. I knew that this was just the beginning. It would get messier, uglier, and harder. But I was ready. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story anymore. I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange sense of relief. Like a weight had been lifted. It was terrifying, but it felt like freedom too. No more hiding, no more pretending. I had taken control, and there was no going back. The next few days felt like a blur. My phone didn't stop buzzing. calls from reporters, messages from people I didn't even know, asking for interviews or offering their support. But there was only one thing on my mind: getting my life back. I wasn't going to let my mother and what she'd done win. I reached out to a legal team, a group with a solid reputation for handling financial fraud cases. They were sharp, meticulous, and they knew how to fight back against manipulation on this scale. They listened as I walked them through everything: how my mother had taken control, how she'd used my name, my power of attorney, to rewrite my wedding and my life. We filed the lawsuit quickly: misuse of power of attorney, fraudulently altering contracts. There was no question about it. My mother had crossed a line. And the evidence we had? It was overwhelming. Invoices, emails, voice recordings, everything I'd been collecting over the last few weeks. Even the documents that showed how she'd been working behind the scenes to replace me with Avery. It was all there. The weight of it settled in my stomach as we prepared for the fight ahead. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There would be court dates, delays, and dirty tactics. But I was ready for it. When the legal papers came back from my mother's side, it wasn't surprising what they said. They were doing everything they could to downplay the situation, calling it a family dispute, claiming I was emotionally unstable, that I had overreacted. I sat in the office as I read through their responses, my mother's lawyer using my own history against me, trying to paint me as the crazy one. I had been expecting this. They weren't going to back down easily, but what they didn't know was that I was done being the one who had to shrink away, who had to make apologies. I was done being the one whose feelings didn't matter. I took a deep breath, pushing my anger aside. I couldn't let this shake me. I couldn't let their tactics work on me. I had a team, a purpose, and now I had a reason to fight. Not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been silenced by people they should have been able to trust. As the weeks dragged on, I saw the toll it took on me. The nights where sleep wouldn't come, the days where I felt like my stomach was tied in knots from all the legal motions and the back and forth. The pressure was suffocating. There were days when I wanted to quit, days when I thought it wasn't worth it. But I reminded myself why I was doing this. And then there was Avery. She stayed silent throughout the whole thing. Not a word, not a single comment on the situation. She had blocked me on social media, of course, after I posted everything, and I hadn't heard from her at all. I didn't expect an apology, but the silence stung. Deep down, I knew the truth. She was a part of this. She had been a part of my mother's plan to replace me. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But at the same time, I understood why she didn't speak up. She had her place in this family, and she wasn't about to risk it. Still, I couldn't let myself be angry with her, not when I had more important things to focus on. This wasn't about my relationship with Avery anymore. It never had been. This was about justice, about making sure this never happened to anyone else. I wasn't fighting for reconciliation or some fairy tale ending. I was fighting for accountability. I was fighting for my life, for my future. I was fighting for the right to exist on my own terms. When the first court date came, I was ready. I walked into that room with my head held high, despite the butterflies in my stomach. My lawyer stood beside me, calm and confident. The opposing team tried to rattle me, tried to make me doubt myself. But I didn't flinch, not once. I knew what I had. I knew what my mother had done. And I wasn't going to stop until she had to face the consequences. The road ahead was long. I knew that. But as the judge reviewed the evidence, as my lawyer spoke on my behalf, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't just about the money or the lawsuit anymore. It was about me taking back the power I had given up for too long. It was about standing tall for the first time in my life. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. The days after the first court hearing were a whirlwind. My phone didn't stop buzzing, messages from everyone, most of them people I hadn't heard from in years. The notifications were endless, friends, family, acquaintances, all reaching out, some with support, others just trying to understand what had happened. It was exhausting, the flood of questions and opinions. But I knew this was just the beginning. As my lawyer dug deeper into the company's records, she kept frowning at unexplained transfers and shell accounts. Something bigger was buried under all this. Then, one morning, I got a call that changed everything. Ms. Fields, "This is Agent Harris with the FBI," the voice on the other end of the line said. "We've been looking into your family's financial records, and we believe there's a larger issue here. Specifically, we're investigating possible illegal redirection of funds by your mother's company. We need your help with some of the details." I sat up straight, my heart hammering in my chest. The words FBI and investigation felt like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on the personal betrayal, the fight with my mother, that I hadn't realized the scale of what I was up against. But this was bigger than I had ever imagined. "They're looking into the business?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "Correct. We've traced some discrepancies in the financial records, and your family's company is currently under review for possible fraud and misuse of funds." I felt my stomach drop. My mother's company had always been the backbone of everything, a foundation of power and status. To think it was being investigated felt surreal, but at the same time, there was a part of me that felt vindicated. This wasn't just a family squabble. This was a system of manipulation and lies, stretching much further than I had realized. "I'll send you everything I have," I said. "All the documents, the emails, everything. You'll have it by the end of the day." The conversation ended quickly after that, but I sat there for a long moment, letting the gravity of it all sink in. The lawsuit was only one piece of the puzzle now. The rest of it, the financial fraud, the manipulation, was about to come to light in a way I hadn't anticipated. Later that afternoon, I saw a local news station pick up the story. A reporter was standing outside my family's business, interviewing people who had heard about the drama unfolding. My heart raced as I watched the broadcast. They showed clips from my social media post, the evidence I had shared, and some of the comments from people who were rallying behind me. But then they showed something else, something that made my blood run cold. My mother had posted a statement. She was defending herself, of course, claiming she was just a devoted mother, trying to help me, trying to protect me from myself. That everything she'd done was for my own good, that she only wanted to make sure I wasn't overwhelmed. And then the real kicker. She blamed my behavior on my mental health struggles, saying that my anxiety had clouded my judgment and made me lash out at the family. That I was acting out of anger and confusion, not logic. It was exactly what I had expected. Another attempt to control the narrative, to paint me as the crazy one, to make me feel like everything that had happened was somehow my fault. I clicked off the news story and put my phone down, but my hands were trembling. I was so damn tired of her using my past against me, of her twisting everything to make herself the victim. I wasn't going to let it work, not this time. As the days passed, more messages came in, both supportive and skeptical. Some people asked if I was sure I had the right to make everything so public. Some doubted my story entirely, saying it was a family dispute that didn't need to be aired for everyone to see. But I didn't care. I wasn't doing this for their approval. I was doing it to make sure my voice wasn't drowned out anymore. I was doing it so my family couldn't hide behind their money and power. The weight of it all was heavy, but I felt a sense of strength rising within me. I knew my path wasn't going to be easy. The backlash would only grow, but I had already come so far, and there was no turning back. I wasn't the person I was a few months ago, the one who kept quiet, who let herself be manipulated. I had taken control of my story. I had exposed the truth. And now, the world was seeing it for what it was. The court was quiet, the air thick with tension as I sat at the table, watching my mother's lawyer try to spin his version of the story. He looked confident at first, like he had some kind of upper hand, but as the evidence piled up, contracts, emails, voice recordings, his arguments started to unravel. I watched as his eyes flickered nervously over the documents, trying to find a way out, but there was nothing. The truth was undeniable. Every move my mother made, every lie she told, was out in the open now. The judge's gaze never left the papers, his expression unreadable as he absorbed everything. When the ruling came down, I didn't expect to feel relief. I thought I would be overwhelmed, like the weight of the entire fight would finally crash down on me. But as the judge confirmed the fraud and abuse of power, as he ordered my mother's assets frozen and a full investigation into the Monroe family's business practices, I felt something else, something lighter. The months of fear, of waiting, of second-guessing myself, all of it lifted. It wasn't just the victory, It was knowing that my voice had been heard, that I had finally fought back, and the truth had won. I walked out of the courthouse, the noise of the world outside rushing back, but I felt calm. My phone buzzed with messages, texts from friends, reporters, people I hadn't heard from in ages, but I didn't feel the rush of anxiety I used to. I didn't feel the need to respond immediately, to explain myself. I had nothing to prove anymore. The last few months had changed me, had burned through the quiet parts of me that used to let things slide. I had been pushed to the edge, and in that space, I had found a new version of myself. One that was stronger, clearer, and far less willing to let anyone control my narrative. A few weeks later, I started a nonprofit, one dedicated to helping women who'd been financially manipulated by their families. It felt like the right thing to do, helping others reclaim their independence, their power, the way I had. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure no one else had to fight the way I did. My mother never reached out, not an apology, not a single word. I didn't expect her to. And Avery? She didn't either. The silence between us felt final, and part of me accepted that it would never be the same. But in a strange way, that too was part of my healing. I had learned that the hardest part wasn't the fight itself. It was finding the strength to move forward, even when the people who should have had your back were the ones who tore you down. The healing didn't come from waiting for apologies that would never come. It came from knowing I had reclaimed my life on my own terms,